My name is Imre Solis, and for 6 years, I have run intake at Meridian Relief Station, a human way station, bolted to the outer edge of the Amaranth Line. Most people have never heard of the line. It isn't on any tourist chart. It is a quarantine boundary, drawn by the Halvern Compact 41 years ago, and on the far side of it lived the soul. I want to be precise about what the line is, because precision is the only thing that ever mattered to the people who drew it. It is not a wall. It is not a minefield. It is a standing order, renewed every decade by a committee that has never once sent a ship through it, forbidding any vessel from crossing into what the original survey called a contamination zone of indeterminate resolution. 41 years ago, a Soul Colony transport suffered a containment breach in its water reclamation system. Something in the recycled water made people sick. Nobody outside the transport ever agreed on what it was. The Compact's answer was to seal the sector, quarantine every Soul vessel caught inside it, and revisit the finding once conclusive data becomes available. Conclusive data never became available because nobody was permitted to go get it. I have spent 6 years watching the Soul through the observation deck's long window, which curves along the station's dorsal hull and gives you the whole Cordon in one sweep if you stand at the center rail. Their ships hang out there in loose formation, slate blue hulls gone matte with decades of micrometeorite pitting, running lights dimmed to conserve power that was never meant to last this long. They send a status packet every 8 days, on the 8-day cycle their grandparents set up, because habit outlives hope. I log it, I forward it, I file the request to review the quarantine finding, the way I have filed it every quarter for 6 years, and every quarter it comes back the same, pending further study. There are 11,000 Soul behind that line now. 3 generations have been born there. The youngest of them have never once felt open daylight that wasn't filtered through a viewport. In my first year at Meridian, I used to believe the quarantine would lift the way a fever breaks, quietly, on its own schedule, once the right report crossed the right desk. By my 3rd year I understood it wouldn't, because lifting it required someone to admit that 41 years of committee renewals had been built on nothing, and admitting that carried a cost no Compact official wanted, charged to their own tenure. It was easier to renew the finding than to overturn it. It is always easier to renew a mistake than to own one. I filed my quarterly requests anyway, not because I believed they would work, but because the alternative was pretending the 8-day status packets from the far side of that line were just data, and not 11,000 people counting down their air. What changed was not the Soul. What changed was a woman named Dr. Priya Anand, a xenopathologist on secondment from Earth's Relief Corps, who spent 4 months doing something nobody on the Compact side had apparently thought to do in 41 years. She actually ran the original water samples, the ones archived and forgotten in a Compact records vault, through a modern sequencer. The contaminant that made the first colonists sick wasn't a pathogen at all. It was a mineral salt, leached from a faulty reclamation filter, that caused a short, ugly illness, and then simply stopped being a problem once the water cycled clean. It had not been a threat in 4 decades. It had never needed a quarantine. It had needed a filter replaced, 41 years ago, by whoever was closest. I brought the report to my station commander, a broad, quiet woman named Adayeze Pharaoh, at 0300 ship time, because I could not make myself wait for the morning brief. She read it twice. Then she asked me one question. If we cross that line, does anyone die because of the water? No, I said. Nobody's died from that water in 40 years. Then the only thing that dies, she said, is our standing with the Compact Liaison Office. I want to tell you that was a hard decision for her. It wasn't. She signed the authorization before I finished my 2nd cup of coffee, and she signed it knowing exactly what it would cost. A formal protest from the Compact, a suspended trade clause, 6 months of very unpleasant meetings that would fall on her desk and not mine. She signed it anyway, because the alternative was watching 11,000 people finish out their lives behind a mistake nobody had bothered to correct. We took 2 medical transports and 1 escort corvette, not because we expected trouble, but because Pharaoh wanted the Soul to see, on their sensors, exactly what kind of ships were coming before they had to decide whether to trust them. I rode in the lead transport with Dr. Anand because I was the only person on the station who had spoken to the Soul's convoy elder more than twice, across a comm channel, over 6 years of quarterly denials. Her name is Vesa Orthane, and she is younger than I expected the first time I saw her face on a live feed instead of a text packet. 40 maybe, meaning she was born on the wrong side of that line and has never known anything else. When our transport crossed the boundary marker, a simple automated beacon that has done nothing but blink red for 4 decades, she was waiting on her ship's cramped bridge, and she did not look relieved. She looked braced, the way you brace when good news has burned you before. "You are inside the Cordon," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a fact she needed to hear confirmed out loud. "We are," I said. "We're not leaving until your people are somewhere the line doesn't reach." I told her about the filter and the sequencer and the 41 years. I watched her take it in the way you take in a diagnosis, piece by piece, checking each part against a lifetime of being told the opposite. When I finished, she didn't ask about compensation or apology, or the compact's 41 years of silence. She asked how many of her ships our transports could take in one run, because she had done the math on her people's dwindling air scrubbers a long time ago, and she wasn't going to waste the visit on anything but logistics. It took us 3 days to ferry all 11,000 out, transport by transport, past a boundary marker that kept blinking red the entire time, as if it hadn't gotten the news either. The work itself was unglamorous. Manifests, berth assignments, a cracked oxygen recycler on the 4th Sol vessel that our engineers spent 6 hours patching before it could make the crossing under its own power. Vesa ran the loading order herself, ship by ship, prioritizing the oldest hulls first without being asked, and when I offered to take some of that off her hands, she told me, not unkindly, that she had been managing this convoy's survival for longer than I had been alive, and would finish the job the way she'd started it. Nobody wept on camera. Nobody made a speech. What I remember instead is the 3rd day, when a sole child of maybe 6, who had never in her life stood anywhere the ceiling wasn't a hull plate 11 meters overhead, stepped off the transport ramp onto Meridian Station's open observation deck and stopped dead at the sight of the long window and the real, unfiltered light of a nearby star pouring through it. She didn't say anything either. She just stood there with her hand flat against the glass for a long time, and her mother let her, and behind them a line of 100 more soul waited without complaint, watching the girl the way you watch a thing you'd forgotten you were allowed to want. Vesa found me on the deck not long after that, and for the first time in 6 years of comm channel formality, she didn't open with a status report. She asked how long the window had been there, on the station, curved along the hull like that. I told her it had been there the whole time, unremarkable, the kind of architecture you stop noticing after your first week. She looked at it a while longer and said that on the far side of the line, every viewport on every Sol ship had been sized and placed for structural reasons only, never for the view, because after the 2nd decade, nobody building anything back there had bothered to imagine a version of the future where the view might matter again. The cost came exactly as fast as Pharaoh predicted. The compact liaison suspended 2 trade clauses within the week and lodged a formal protest, that is, as I write this, still working its way through committee. Pharaoh took the meetings. She has not once told me she regrets it, and I believe her, because regret isn't the thing you see on her face when the Sol transports check in now from open orbit, instead of behind a dead man's quarantine line. I still work intake at Meridian Station. The observation deck is quieter these days, without 11,000 distant hulls to log every 8 days. But sometimes, if I stand at the center rail at the right hour, I can still see the boundary marker out past the far edge of the old Cordon, blinking red on an automated cycle nobody has bothered to shut down. I've put in a request to have it decommissioned. It's pending further study.